So treating people, we're looking at treating a foundational personality. So there is a personality type. There are many personality types, and one personality type might be the kind that restrains themselves a lot, is timid, shy, is afraid of being judged, and that personality is going to have a lot of stagnant liver qi. So giving that person the flower remedy specific to their personality is going to allow their liver qi to flow in a certain way, to bring it back into balance in a certain way. A different kind of personality could be a very impulsive type where, act before you think, go, 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 don't see what's around you. And that is just this overactive liver qi. Giving them their remedy is going to bring their energy into balance in a different kind of way. So what you were saying is totally true. It's like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. They bring you into balance, into like your truer self.
Mm-hmm. Hello and welcome to the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. I'm Tara Bachland, and today's guest is Loey Colebeck. She is a holistic therapist and an accredited flower essence therapist. And today we're talking about flower essences, of course, which we talk about as being used as natural remedies for physical and emotional aspects of the menstrual cycle. Now, we kind of meander off on a few other topics as well, as these flower essences are our favorite aspects of herbalism and natural health. And so we get a little carried away, but there's tons to gain here in learning about what flower essences are and how they can help you on the physical and emotional level very, very naturally. And there are many aspects to natural health, and a great introduction is my body typing quiz. Body typing actually dates back thousands of years and is used in ancient cultures in their forms of medicine. And I've really simplified it and made it really fun for us in our modern day and age to learn about body typing. So at weightfreewellness.com, you will see the body typing quiz, and go ahead and take that and learn about your body type and the foods, exercises, and the habits that help you to remain or attain some balance in your life. So today's podcast, like I said, it meanders a bit, but there's some really great nuggets to gain, and I'd want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy. Well, Loey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tara.
This is one of my favorite topics. Well, of course, health and wellness in general, herbs, but then flower essences, I think, are my favorite topic in the realm of remedies. And so you are a holistic therapist, accredited flower essence therapist. So tell me how you got into that, and how does one get to be known as a flower essence therapist?
I love what you just said about flower essences being your favorite part of herbalism in a way. And I think that my trajectory is something like that, where, in high school, I experimented with healthy diet and then vegetarianism. And I started to learn herbs in college with, friends who lived in the country, making my own medicines, and studied some herbal medicine in California. And it was in California in the end of the 90s that my dear roommate friend's mother makes flower essences. And so I was introduced to flower essences there. And I just dabbled in the kind of do-it-yourself sort of way that we do in the United States. I see people just, this sort of dabbling, but not really understanding what it's about, or it's just like something you can take. And then I lived in Spain. I moved to Spain and lived there for 11 years. And in Barcelona, there are multiple schools doing proper professional training in flower essence therapy, where it's not, part of the thing about it is that taking flower essences and getting or receiving or giving flower essence therapy are different things, because the therapeutic process is involved, where you've got not only the tool, the medicine, the flower essences are the medicine, but you've also got this other person in front of you who can see you differently than you can see yourself, and who can reflect things back to you. So part of my training also involves psychotherapy tools for flower essence therapists, with some Gestalt work and some family constellation work. So there's a lot of tools in my bag besides the flower essences. And that is what flower essence therapy is. And so when you said that it's your part of your favorite part of herbalism, I think that for me also, I've seen how flower essences can touch a kind of healing that other things can't touch. And I'm not discrediting other things. Diet is extremely important and fundamental. And herbal medicine also help to heal the body. And if you don't have the flower essences part of it, or the mind-body part, there's this vital disconnection between your, I guess what Dr. Bach, the founder of this kind of therapy, said is that flower essences help to bring your personality closer to your soul. In other words, in psychotherapeutic terms, like to go into the shadow, to catalyze consciousness. And in Chinese medicine, we can see the different connections that are made between organs, emotions, spiritual virtues, body fluids. So truly the mind and body are not separate, and flower essences help to create that connection.
I know it's going to be hard to be brief on like what are flower essences, because I think people know what herbs are. Like you can get them in capsules and you can get them in tinctures, teas, but I have my favorite way to explain flower essences, but I'm curious to hear how you explain them to people who have no idea what they are.
Well, maybe we can trade explanations.
I'd love to.
Let's try. Well, luckily I've had to do this a lot, being at expos and giving talks and stuff. So, and also there is a flower essence therapist named Sarah Crow who develops medicines, and she was able to explain it in a way that I'm going to appropriate a little bit of her language because she did a really good job of explaining how kind of, let's say that we take on one end of the herbal plant medicine spectrum, we take essential oils, which is a ton of plant material to extract a tiny little bit of volatile oil that has a scent and that we can use in carrier oils. So that's on one end of the spectrum. Then in the middle, we have like teas and tinctures and capsules that are pretty close to 1-to-1, 1-to-5, 1-to-1 kind of thing, where it's kind of the herb is actually the amount that you're taking or using. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have flower essences, where we are taking a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of the plant and putting it in water, and that water is used in an exponential way. And the way that the way that it's described is, say that we've got a plant and it's got its whole way of existing. It's tall or it's short, it has a central stalk or it does not have a central stalk, it has hairs on its leaves or it doesn't. And the way that it relates within its environment, the kind of soil it grows in, all of these things, we could call it, and like its growth pattern, we could call that the plant's gestalt. And so this plant puts all of its very, very, very best energy, very best life force into creating a flower. And the flower is what is going to be passed on to the next generation, So we're taking the flower, which is the pinnacle of the plant's production. We're taking that flower, putting it in water, and photographing that plant's gestalt into the water. That water, which does not have any odor, any scent, is what we use. We can ingest it or we can apply it topically. And because we're made of water, and the relationship that plants and humans and animals have is so, parallel, that water that holds the plant's gestalt and energy speaks to our own gestalt, a personality pattern, a personality structure. Like I explained before, an inflammatory personality will respond to the remedy that has a similar gestalt in the plant world. And so it's like plant chi in water. It's the plant's life force in water that speaks to the whole of our personality, which is mind, body, and emotions and spirit. Not spirit, I guess. Spirit would not be personality, but mind, body, and emotions is our personality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the briefest.
Yeah, it's so tough to make it brief. There's so much to it, you know?
Yeah. Otherwise, I just say it's plant, chi, and water.
Yeah.
You know, that's the really, really, really shorthand.
I tend to end up explaining it to people because I find that my mode here with the podcast, and even before I was doing the podcast, is introducing people to these concepts that they had no idea that they existed. And so the flower essences is probably the most challenging, along with homeopathics.
Yeah.
Similar in that way. And so I usually tell a person, so, you know, when someone gives you flowers, and I use a couple examples like daisies or roses, I said, if they give you daisies, you kind of feel one thing. You wonder, okay, that was nice, you know, but if they give you roses, you're like, wow, it carries a different feeling with it. And each color has its own feeling as well. And I said, it's kind of like that each flower has this sentiment that is passing along to you. It has this vibration. And so you're capturing that. And I explain a little bit of the process, you know, that they're picked at the height of their most pinnacle point of their maturation, and or even those moon cycle, or certain waters are used, and it's like taking in that essence of the flower. The daisy, you're taking in the daisy, or like a sunflower if you need a little bit more cheeriness, you know, just in a general sense. There's so much more to it, but making it relatable in that sense. And truly, rose, you know, is the symbol of love across cultures. And it's amazing because, as we were just discussing culturally, it does apply across cultures, especially the staple flowers.
Yeah. Yeah. They have their message. That's another way that I've described it sometimes to people is, you know, the difference in the feeling that you have when you're in an oak savanna compared to a field of wild oats. Mm-hmm. You know, how does it feel to be in a pine forest compared to along the river with a bunch of aspen, or compared to, you know, an olive grove? They're very different feelings. And it's so hard because it does start to sound kind of foo-foo when you talk about flower essences. It's just kind of unavoidable, you know, because we're in such this mechanistic culture, unfortunately. But
so we were talking earlier about making it very real and apparent. I've used it, and I remember my first experience was so blatant. And I was working with Matthew Wood. He recommended it. He's a very well-known herbalist, and so, you know, there's a certain amount of clout and credibility that comes with. You wonder sometimes if you're taking it, if you got is more like a placebo effect. You know,
yeah.
Okay, this very well-known herbalist recommended this, but it was like, bam, it just, so my first flower essence was agrimony. And I didn't understand, like, you know, a very good practitioner will, like you said, see things that you don't see in yourself. Mm-hmm. And I always have to, when I'm telling the story, I have to put a caveat along with it, because I don't want to make someone afraid to use the flower essences, because my experience was very strong in the sense that I had a lot of emotional release, where I have a temperament that will tend to hold things in, hold them inside. And so agrimony really helped me. So the doctrine, some signs in the flowers are that they're, you know, they're small, they're tight, they're uptight, they're, you know, they can be rigid looking perhaps. It really helped me to release things emotionally that I didn't know that I was holding in. So once you have an experience with it, and especially when they're really professionally recommended, but even since, you know, I use the Rescue Remedy, I use the Sleep Rescue by Bach Flowers, you know, the Sleep Rescue for sure. When I have lots of thoughts going on in my mind at night, it's like some cloud just comes and just swipes away the thoughts that are occupying my mind. And so, yeah, it sounds so nebulous what these flower essences are, but once you experience it, it's really absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I find fascinating when I found you is that you apply it in a way. Of course, it sounds like you can apply it very much in this, like you said, the flower essence therapy kind of way, but you also use it to help women with their menstrual cycles. Mm-hmm. And I was very curious to have this discussion because as I was sharing it with you before we started, this is a topic that I've wanted to discuss on the podcast anyways. And because I think it's very little is known in our common culture how much a woman's cycle reflects what is going on in her whole body. And what are some things in working with people that you see are common issues that can be addressed even simply with flower essences?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let me just make a couple comments about what you were saying and then go to your question.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I was cruising ahead.
No, that's okay because that, we have limited time. But one point is that the placebo effect is real, and it's just points to how powerful our mind is. And in the scientific studies that they've done in Cuba, of course, they have used the placebo. So they've tested against the placebo effect. And yes, the placebo effect is real, and the flower essences are even more, not even more real, but they work. They tested against placebo. Also, in doing flower essence therapy, like you took agrimony, it can be like the person who puts on a cheerful face, but even to themselves, where they're masking their own emotions even to themselves, and how taking agrimony can really release a lot of stuff. And in doing flower essence therapy, some of the things that my teachers have said is, we can put a base underneath that to help it be more manageable. So there's one teacher who says, when agrimony knocks at the door, you open it up and you shut the door. Like that's too intense. But if sweet chestnut knocks at the door and comes in and agrimony follows, it's a much more manageable experience, because often what is underneath that anxiety and masked emotion and agrimony is an anguish, which is what sweet chestnut can treat. And there are other pairs like that. So that's part of what understanding and knowing is part of the stuff that we'll be able to talk about in the course I give. That's
a big difference big thing to point out, and less intimidating, I'm sure, for anyone else to hear.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have to respect where the person is at in working together. Like, we work together on somebody's health. That's how I see it's a therapeutic process that I accompany, and I offer tools, and I don't force anybody into anything. And, if they're having trouble with their formula, we can adjust it and whatever, So your question about, it was, how do I use flower essences, or what are some of the things that people come and want to work on? Premenstrual syndrome can be hard for people. I've had, there can be a lot of sadness, there can be anger, and that is seen in blood disorders too, where there's cramping and, stagnation that leads to pain. In Chinese medicine, a lot of attention is paid to the quality of menstruation, the quality, quantity, and all of that. So all of that is very much related to the emotions. I mean, think about this. The endocrine system and hormones and emotions, how inextricably interrelated they are. So we're taking this cycle that women go through every month. And we all have, a whole wash of emotions that happen to us for very many different reasons. And in the menstrual cycle, we have this cyclical rise and fall of energy that corresponds to emotions, correspond to hormones, correspond to archetypes, and different appropriate actions that we can take or try to fight that are only going to cause us difficulty. So, for example, a client who would be having a really hard time with a certain kind of sadness, a really unbearable kind of sadness in the premenstrual phase. And we started looking at some ancestral work because she happened to be really interested in that. It was actually coming to me in part for that. So looking at, on the one hand, is she expressing her emotions? What is the sadness covering up? Where is the sadness coming from? We carry our ancestors in our genetics and our epigenetics, which is our emotional genetics. So we can be carrying ancestral trauma. And this is proven scientifically also, which I can, if anybody wants to, find out more about that, I would be happy to talk about that. So, it's not been, what happens in our society with trauma is that our way of coping is to deny. There are so many losses that we or our mothers or our grandmothers, great-grandmothers have experienced. There's been abuse, there have been miscarriages, there have been abortions, there have been adoptions sent out, there have been all these lost children. Is often the case. There's often at least one ungrieved loss, and possibly many. So part of what we might be experiencing in the present day is some ungrieved loss that an ancestor had, that's a whole other kettle of fish, really, when we start talking about ancestral trauma, but that's just one example. Mm-hmm. Another example could be, if I'm not expressing my emotions and I'm kind of stifling them, then that is going to affect my physiology too. And we could say that sadness and grief is one emotion, and it's different from depression, which is actually stifling an expression of possibly of anger or of, not having my boundaries respected, which is a very common situation for women, to not have our boundaries respected or to feel like respected as the full spiritual, intellectual, emotional, sexual, physical beings and embodied spirits that we are, mm-hmm. on so many unconscious levels. So the things that can happen in the body can be unconscious expressions of things that the flower essences can help catalyze into consciousness to be released, like the sadness, like the anger, or just the need to put up boundaries or to take space. I really think that premenstrual syndrome in part is just in that second half of our cycle, when we're post-ovulation and going toward menstruation and beginning menstruation, is a time where we really need to go inward, rest, and cultivate our energy, because menstruation is a loss of energy. In Chinese medicine and in Taoism, it's Jing energy. We're losing this vital life force, and we need to somehow replenish it. If you don't sleep at night, how are you going to have energy in the day? If you don't rest in winter, how are you going to put forth your projects in spring and summer? If you don't rest during menstruation, how are you going to have energy for the month as you come up on your projects and your outward energy toward ovulation? So there's this cycle. If you want to put up that screenshot we talked about.
Yeah, and I find the seasons make it so much easier to relate to, just as you were talking about the seasons.
Yeah, when you look at what we're talking about.
I don't know if you see it. Do you see it?
I see it. Yeah, I see it.
Is it all clear? Is it all in?
Yeah, it's clear. This is a menstrual cycle clock, a menstrual clock created by the credits here are www.chaoticacat.com. This one is a nice one. I think that I would rearrange some stuff on there. I think it seems just slightly out of order, but it really shows how we've got night and day. We've got the moon cycle of the new moon, the full moon. We've got winter, spring, summer, fall. And the Taoists talked about nourishing life, and to nourish life and to have health, you need to be in tune with nature. We're not separate from nature. That's in some sort of intellectual myth that somehow we're above or separate from nature. To have health, we need to be in tune with these rhythms and these cycles, the daily cycles, the hourly cycles, the monthly cycles, the yearly cycles. And women, we're very much connected to these monthly cycles. I mean, the moon, you can see it. You know, it's this big rock or this entity, this God, whatever you want, whatever you believe about it, it's there, it's real, and it pulls the tides and it pulls our menstruation. So every month you can feel this energy rise and fall. So if we don't respect the time that we need to rest, then we're going to be grumpy. I really think that PMS is just a woman kind of saying, talk to the hand. You know, I don't have the energy for that, but not really realizing it. It's, you know, I saw your interview with a doctor. I don't remember the name of the doctor who was talking about functional psychiatry, functional medicine. What is the function of premenstrual syndrome? You know, it's give me a break, leave me alone, let me rest.
How do you coach people, you know, because not all our jobs or positions, you know, I'm fortunate to work from home. So if I want to work on the couch, I can do that, as opposed to, you know, I could be doing this interview on the couch is what I'm saying, rather than with this nice background. But I realize that or there are times that I may convince myself to push, but that's, you know, most people are in an environment where they don't have those choices. How do you coach them to work through or not work through those times?
It is about choices. There are choices in how much do you make yourself keep up on every single aspect of your life, or how much do you allow yourself to slide sometimes in some areas? You know, how much help do you enlist? There's this I'm going to speak in flower essence language. There's just very elm. Elm is for overwhelm. There's this very elm kind of personality in the modern woman, trying to do it all. Perfectionism, very much a perfectionist attitude, you know, trying to prove herself to male colleagues, to the male world, to the male structure, to herself, to, you know, her inner child or whatever, but there's this perfectionism of doing it all. So how much can be let go of? You know, can the dishes sit in the sink for 3 days? Can somebody else be enlisted to do it, even if it's done imperfectly? Can things be not perfect? Is it okay for things to just not be perfect? For example, maybe the focus will still have to be, you know, do our very best at work, but maybe we're able to take that 1 day a month to rest. Maybe we're able to take off. The last job I had that was the last time I was employed by somebody else, I kind of, you know, I do have this sort of pioneering spirit, and I was able to say to a rather receptive audience, you know, I have 1 day a month religious holiday that I need to rest. That might not be visible for everybody, but there need to be choices made about communicating where I'm at least somebody, to my family member, to my spouse or partner, to say, this is what I need now. And that's part of vocalizing, instead of becoming crabby, to actually be conscious of what's going on and to be able to say no. So how do we sustain ourselves as women in, you know, living in that culture? For me, it's a struggle. For me, it's a struggle too. there's this great big force, this great big cultural energy that is how do you do it? Stay close to the earth, as much as possible. I advise clients to take their time outside, to just take these breathers. There are other practices that can be done even in a busy schedule, some Taoist practices of breathing, cultivating energy, not allowing it to be lost. Things that you can do at least to not lose your energy, like, don't drink so much alcohol, don't eat so much junk food. Why am I drinking alcohol and eating junk food? Maybe I'm avoiding some emotions. Maybe it's time for some agrimony and sweet chestnut,
Yeah, I always make sure I have some on hand, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's like when I feel like I need to escape myself, maybe I haven't taken enough time to go inside and see what needs to be addressed, what needs to be processed. So that's where the menstrual cycle kind of forces us and allows us to do that as women, to go in and to gain our wisdom, which is going inward. It's a gift that we have.
Yeah, it really is, and I started learning about it more. So going to an acupuncturist, and she's asking me about, how much the color, and I won't get too graphic or anything here, are there clots, how long is the cycle and that kind of thing. And I'm like, why does this matter? But as I started asking questions, which is my nature to ask questions, she started explaining, but not really enough. I actually had to look up things on my own, and it was really fascinating to understand, even like you had mentioned, the organs and family patterns for sure. And I started questioning too, because my cycles were similar to my mom's. Oh, I wonder what kind of family patterns what's in there. And, the liver, what kind of anger, am I addressing anger and letting that flow, and, or just my liver function? And when they're all related, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And even, looking at it from the Chinese medicine viewpoint, there's everything in moderation and everything in balance. And most of modern society spends way too much time sitting, and sitting leads to mental rumination, energy stagnation, and so the liver is going to get frustrated too, or overusing the eyes, overworking the eyes. All this screen time is really stagnating our liver qi. Living in the modern world where there's not enough green, because the liver corresponds to spring, which is this fresh breath of budding, breezy, birds and bees, lovely lightness. But if that budding gets like resistance to it, it's going to push even harder. It's going to get angry. That's what anger is. It's like trying to dampen down spring and not let it, or even more graphically, trying to prevent a baby from being born. That push of being born, of birth, is connected to the liver's energy and what the liver does. And that liver energy is also so connected to menstruation, to pushing blood, to keeping things flowing smoothly. If you stop that from anything, from drinking alcohol in spring, is going to harm the liver. From not expressing your clear boundaries, that's going to harm the liver. Not vocalizing when somebody's doing something that hurts you, and not saying, hey, that hurt, don't do that. If you don't do that, that hurts the liver. All of these things injure the liver. And so things get thrown off, sitting still, using the computer, not saying no. Yeah, that's all going to affect the menstrual cycle.
And what's interesting using the flower essences is that, especially when they're obviously done in the right combination too, it's like you just do it as if it's always been. It's not like taking a medication where you can be just knocked on your feet or on your butt, and all of a sudden things are pushed into gear. It's like, oh, that's what that's supposed to feel like. That's what that feels like when that is functioning. And because I've had gentler experiences with other flower essences, and it's like, oh, wow, I really need, it's like a drink of water when you're parched. It's like, oh yeah, that's what it feels like to feel normal again.
Yeah.
Such a relief.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
even if you have PMS, it's like, it's pushing, it's trying to make things happen, but using the menstrual cycle as the gauge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's fascinating, which is, I would joke with my husband, especially it's springtime now officially here in Minnesota. And my joke is, are you going to take me for a walk tonight, honey? I'm the dog, I have to go for my walks, which is so true. Once the weather is a certain temperature, I just have to go outside and go for a walk.
Absolutely. And you see that's what people are doing in Minnesota. It's just like this burst of energy. You see people outside so much. So if that's something you're not doing, follow the trend and get outside, because that is exactly what the liver needs.
Absolutely.
And there are other things too. I studied some Taoist sexuality and Bach flower essences, did a workshop with my teacher whose book I ended up translating, which is Bach flower essences in Chinese medicine by Pablo Noriega. So in this workshop I did with him, he talked about nourishing the cycle of life in Taoism and nourishing our essence, our sexual energy connected to our jing, connected to our kidneys and our life battery, basically, and to all the five senses. So not just the genitals, way far beyond that. Mm-hmm. And how some of the things that you can do to nourish life in spring, walk on the grass barefoot, because you need to release some of that clogged energy that's been stagnant from winter. Walk barefoot on the grass, let down your hair. And the liver's virtue, let's say the spirit of the liver, the energy of the liver, its virtue is kindness and goodness, as opposed to anger, which is its emotion when that energy gets blocked. So relating with people, having these relaxed, enjoying, reconnecting with everything's coming up from the surface. And that's the same sensation. And so taking the flower essences can help put you more aligned with that. If you are a personality, and this is where we can get into also, flower essence therapy means, originally Dr. Bach was looking at treating the personality. Dr. Bach was the physician in the 1930s who developed this therapy, and he was working as a bacteriologist, and he was treating people with these intestinal bacteria nosodes for different chronic diseases. And he started noticing that if he would just pay attention to the person's personality and disposition, because he started seeing similar groups that would correspond to similar medicines, he would just give them the medicine according to their personality and disposition rather than waiting for the lab results to come. And he had better results treating people that way than waiting for the lab tests to come back. So then he evolved into medicine solely based on personality. So treating people, we're looking at treating a foundational personality. So there is a personality type. There are many personality types, and one personality type might be the kind that restrains themselves a lot, is timid, shy, is afraid of being judged, and that personality is going to have a lot of stagnant liver qi. So giving that person the flower remedy specific to their personality is going to allow their liver qi to flow in a certain way, to bring it back into balance in a certain way. A different kind of personality could be a very impulsive type where, act before you think, go, 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 don't see what's around you. And that is just this overactive liver qi. Giving them their remedy is going to bring their energy into balance in a different kind of way. So what you were saying is totally true. It's like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. They bring you into balance, into like your truer self,
And it doesn't turn the introvert into all of a sudden an extrovert, or the extrovert into all of a sudden they're in their turtle shell.
Right.
It brings them to their own state of balance.
Exactly. Exactly. They don't change your personality. It's not like pharmaceutical, medicines for the mind that can just have these side effects that change a personality drastically. These are actually just moderating a personality or the energy of a personality, but you stay you become more truly you. Mm-hmm. And true healing really has to do with becoming the most solid you that you are, and being so truly on your path in harmony with your surroundings and the environment and the times and the earth and nature in your own unique way. Mm-hmm. That's where flower essence therapy is so beautiful, because it should be always personalized. I don't really like formulas. I never prescribe formulas except for rescue remedy in conjunction with a personalized formula, because that's not the foundation of the medicine. It's always personalized formula. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I will always give clients exactly what they need at that point in time. And then, when we have follow-up visits, they'll have some foundation essences according to their personality, but there can be some surface stuff that will change. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I can get that. So I was just thinking the other day, it reminded me of how I was thinking about, when we're babies, it's like you're just so pure, like that is your pure soul essence. You just can't help it. But even as a toddler and as you get a little older, you get this programming, whether from your parents and society, and it just kind of keeps building up. And you don't realize it until maybe you have some kind of conflict in life, or maybe also you're realizing, a woman has menstrual issues, and then she goes to one doctor and another doctor, and then finally maybe stumbles upon Chinese medicine or what you do, which are related. And you realize that, okay, I am me somewhere in here, but there's been a whole lot of layers of other stuff happening. And even before we were born, as you're mentioning the family epigenetics, or even family trauma and so forth, the things that we don't know are there. And I do this podcast, like I was sharing with you, I changed the kind of heading currently to shedding life on the many paths to health, because I do truly believe that while for someone might have an interesting experience with flower essence, for another person, it might be the absolute thing that they needed to help untie a bunch of other things to get to their core self, to help unravel all those other issues in life. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. When you were talking about the layers that get built up, I remember feeling in my own healing process, maybe in my 20s or perhaps in my early 30s, feeling like, so it's just going to keep getting worse. Like these symptoms that I have, they're just, this is what it's going to be like. This is, it's going to get worse as I grow old, kind of thing. Or looking for ways to alleviate symptoms, but still having the same things come up over and over. And for me, with the flower essence therapy, finding a way to be able to actually go into the core of things and have something that's going to catalyze the shedding process of everything that's built up, even down to the intrauterine experiences, and even beyond that, even into the epigenetic stuff, and being able to shed that ancestral patterning. There are so many flower essences and systems that, when you're working in this, I really believe that when you're working in this environment, sort of container, this safe container with a therapist who will help walk with you along the process and see your process through, and somebody who's been there before. And somebody who has all their flaws too, and who can have compassion for their own flaws, and who can do this process in this very organic way, because that's what it's going to be. No two processes that are alike. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but it's this life journey that you're talking about, and how all this stuff gets built up, and how can I get back to that essence of what it was like what is that pure essence of who I am?
Mm-hmm. And I think it can be easily overlooked, which is why I wanted to do a podcast on this subject in particular, that, your deeper emotional, or even what seems on the surface, or you may not even know it's there. It can be so integral to releasing and healing other aspects of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even just like really simplistic terms, the symptom of like, when I go to bed at night, I keep, I have, my mind is just on a loop and it's hard to fall asleep. Okay, there's a flower essence to help treat that. That's one of the symptoms. We'll put that in the formula. Oh yeah, and besides that also, I have like really gassy stomach and a hard time with some digestion. Okay, well, that mental rumination is related to some of that kind of stuff. So let's see if, is there any resentment there? Because resentment can cause some of that kind of thing too. So just kind of this back and forth, really symptomatic, and then just kind of shedding some of these outer layers. And a person can go as deep as they want to, or as shallow as they want to, take as much time as they want to, it's kind of like one of my teachers says, it's like the taxi driver. She says, being a flower essence therapist, it's like you're driving a taxi. Somebody gets in, they have to tell you where they want to go. Mm. And they can change their route too at any time. Maybe they think they want to go somewhere and then they decide they want to go somewhere else. And you're accompanying them, and, maybe that you'll even let them drive, but you're there with them on this journey. And then they'll get to wherever they decide they're going, or maybe they'll just decide, I think I just want to stop here on this corner, and they'll get out. And that's the way that she describes it, which I think is kind of a nice view of it, just this bit of a journey.
That is really neat. Maybe they need to hang out on the corner for a while, meet up with some friends, have some experiences there, and then hail a cab again.
Yeah, maybe it'll be the same cab, maybe it'll be a different one.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. So as you say, the many paths, right? Shedding light on the many paths, somebody can hop in the taxi, they can take the rail, they can go on foot, they can take the bicycle, and they'll get to their destination, if they have a focus, if that's the destination they want to get to. Mm-hmm. It can be a lot of, yeah.
We kind of hopped around on different topics and so forth. Would you like to conclude with maybe a special message or something that you, I'm sorry, this is so it's very flower essence-y. I know,
I was thinking.
I'm not as on point. Usually I'm like, so would you like to end with a parting message?
Well, I think I was exactly on your same wavelength right now, because it has been kind of nebulous, multi-directional, this conversation. And so people might feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, where have I just been? And I would say, spring has just sprung. Just kind of go with that energy. And so spring energy can be very directional, but it can also be like, let's just let ourselves enjoy and have a little bit more enjoyment in our lives too. So the stuff that needs to be heard will sink in, and you can listen to the podcast again. It's recorded. I guess if I were to say a parting message, it's really about becoming authentic with one's true self, and how flower essences help somebody become really authentic with their true self, and how that's reflected in the body and the health and physiology. And likewise with ancestral healing, to release some of those chains that are in the epigenetics, so that you can also become your more true self and more free to develop your true path. That's what Taoism is also about. So I think that's kind of tying it all together there, is having all these various tools to find your true essence.
Mm-hmm. And what's so cool is that, I wouldn't want someone to go away overwhelmed, like, okay, how am I going to address all of these things? Truly, if you go in you meet with a professional like you, it actually can work on those multiple layers at the same time, at least from my own experience. It works the physical, mental, emotional, so you don't have to try to think, how am I going to do all this?
Yeah, you don't have to eat the whole cake at once. And if you feel like you have to eat the whole cake at once, we'll give you elm flower essence, and that'll help, help you prioritize things and just take them one at a time. But yeah, there's taking flower essences will help on all these multiple levels. And change takes time in a person, takes time in a family, in a society. So if you're feeling impatient about change, we can give you impatience flower essence. There are ways to work with it. There's ways to work with it respecting the individual.
Yeah.
And, just one change at a time is enough. One change a month is enough,
Can bring about significant changes over time, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I really appreciate this discussion. It's been a lot of fun on my favorite herbalism topic, and I feel like you could go on for hours.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thank you so much for listening to the Weight Free Wellness podcast. Hey, we love hearing from you. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Pinterest. We're about everywhere you could have any kind of social media interaction. So hit us up, let us know what you're liking, what you'd like to hear more of, or just say, hey, I love hearing from you. Also, if you thought of someone while you were listening to this and thought, gosh, this person would really be interested in learning about flower essences or could really use this type of information that Weight Free Wellness offers, please share it with them. This is episode number 61. And when you share with them, you help us spread the word. And also it helps us to know that we're creating valuable content that you're appreciating. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.